Big LEZ'S League, an all rugby league experience. Hello, welcome back to Big LEZ'S League. Welcome to the second episode of Breaking Bread. The first episode on the Spotify got a lot of raps, so thank you guys for tuning in. Here's the second episode. We've got plenty of more news for you. Obviously, a big week as well for news, just judging off the list that I've been sent by Isaac over here, getting Mr. Exclusive to do a bit of a deep dive for us. But Isaac, how are you, mate? What's the week of NRL news been like for yourself?
Man, it was a hectic week in footy. Obviously, we just had an awesome weekend with, a ton of upsets and some, huge scores. But, the week in footy last week as well, just in the media, there was a lot going on. It was really, we had some interesting talk from media officials as well as, a couple of players talking about some interesting topics as well. So heaps to get into today, man. I'm keen to get through it all.
Mate, I'm just looking through this list. I am seriously keen to discuss a few of these. But what did you have first for us?
Yeah, so I've got the first one I've got for us today is it's a really interesting one. It's one that I think a lot of footy fans will be split on, and I'm really keen to hear what your thoughts are on it. And so our first story today is Andrew Johns suggests a travel ban for Tom Trbojevic. So as many footy fans would know, Tommy Turbo is once again on the sidelines with another injury, this time with a knee injury, which has prompted immortal Andrew Johns to float the idea of grounding him. So no flights over 2 hours for Tommy Turbo is what Andrew Johns suggests. He says that, sitting for long periods on flights might, it might be impacting, how, his structure through his legs and his body. And he's saying that it's not good for his body. He needs to be moving. And so he suggests, flights to Auckland, flights to Brisbane may not be in Tommy Turbo's best interest. And so any games that are out those ways, they should be banning him from traveling.
It's an interesting little, it's an interesting take, and that's so bizarre because it's probably the only player that you'd probably have this sort of rule for. Tom Trbojevic, obviously a ton of injuries throughout his career so far, and it's sat him on the sideline for quite a bit of his career of late. It definitely is an interesting take. I'm not 100% on it. I think that it could definitely be an excuse. I don't think it's the problem, though, for Tom Trbojevic in regards to why he's keeps sustaining these injuries. Some bodies just aren't built for rugby league. I'll tell you what, I thought my body wasn't built for rugby league. I had a ton of injuries myself over the past few years. But yeah, some bodies just aren't built for rugby league. Tom Trbojevic, it seems like all of these injuries, soft tissues, shoulders, legs, hammies more specifically, it just seems like his body isn't fully up for it. He's a terrific player when he plays. He's definitely one of the best players in the competition when he's at full flight, but it just doesn't seem like his body is up for it. And if it is a travel ban that, helps him with his injuries, going to Brisbane, going to Auckland, I don't really mind it. I think that it could help Tom Trbojevic in that sense. As I said, I don't think it's the problem regarding Turbo. I don't think it's the solution necessarily. But I do think that it wouldn't be the worst idea to sort of exercise it and try it out. I think the better idea is just to throw him at centre, to be honest, and just decrease the workload. You've got Lehigh, who's playing some good footy at fullback at the moment. Mate, what are your thoughts on the travel ban?
Spot on, man. It's exactly what I was thinking, in regards to throwing him in at centre. Because as you said, he's, since 2020, and I've got it here, he's missed over 50 games, whether it's been a hamstring injury, a shoulder injury, now his knee is injured, and some bodies are just not built for footy. And I guess, it goes both ways. You can have, extreme NRL talent, but, if your body's not built up for it, you're not going to be winning, or you're not going to be playing at a high clip all the time. So if it means, chucking him in, I don't mind the travel ban idea. I can't say it's something that I've heard floated before in any sport, and I might be wrong, but it's not something that I've personally heard of before. It does make sense. Sitting for, hours at a time in a cramped flight, it can have, it can put pressure on the body, and it's think of any economy flight that you've been on. You're never comfortable. And if you're doing that every couple of weeks, it might have a toll on the body. And no one would know better than Andrew Johns, who, is a legend of the game and flew all around the country. playing footy. So I do get it. But as I said, Tommy Turbo, he's missed over 50 games. That's 2 full seasons missed of footy. I think Manly, they need to come up with a legitimate solution, whether that means chucking in a flight ban and mixing it in with, throwing him in at center, whatever it is, because, you've got an elite fullback now, as you said, in Lehigh Hopewadi. I'd be interested in just seeing how that would potentially go. As most Manly fans would know, Manly's win rate with Turbo as opposed to without Turbo, it's a drastic difference. It's close to 70% win rate with Turbo since 2021, as opposed to 34% without Turbo. So it's definitely something that they need to resolve ASAP. Whether that means trialing, doing a bit of trial and error with a travel ban, chucking him in at center. I do think, especially now you've got your star Daly Cherry Evans leaving the club, you need to maximize Trbojevic's prime. And they need to come up with a solution as soon as possible. So I don't mind the idea of chucking him in at center. But again, if this travel ban is something that, has been tested or could be something that has worked in the past that we don't know about, 100%, I think give it a go. What's the worst that can happen?
Yeah, well, look, we'll have to wait and see what Manly are thinking. Obviously, Tom Trbojevic, I don't think he's expected back for the next few weeks. So we'll have to wait and see what happens then. But yeah, let us know in the comments section below on YouTube. There should be video on Spotify. I'll see if I can work it out, but let us know in the Spotify comments as well what you guys are thinking. Is this the best move for Tom Trbojevic to have that travel ban? Do you just throw him at center with Lehigh doing so well at fullback? What are your guys' thoughts? Let us know in the comments below. Isaac, what's the next update for us?
Yes, so and I broke this story last week, but it's even more interesting now that Parramatta have gotten their first win. But Dylan Walker reveals the real reason he quit the Warriors. So Walker came out just before the Eels' first win of the season, their 23-22 win over the Dragons. He has come out and he has revealed that his choice for leaving the Warriors had nothing to do with, money or, win success or anything like that, but simply just to do with his family. But now that he's at the winless Eels, they've got their first win now. So now he's at the Eels. He's looking to offer leadership and a veteran head in a struggling side. And he's looking to not only steer the side in Mitchell Moses' absence, but also come in and help Mitchell Moses once he's back in. So it seems he really wants to take on that leadership role in the twilight years of his career.
Yeah, well, it's great to see, and we saw a ton of leadership in that game as well with that win over the Dragons. He was really good off the bench, played a really nice role, and he made an immediate impact too. I mean, the halves played a lot better with him in the side, just having that extra set of eyes. We said it in the preview for this one that this was going to be the case. Dylan Walker, obviously coming into this side, having an immediate impact, being that extra set of eyes, what he's done for Luke Metcalf, now what he's doing for Hawko, what he's doing for Dylan Brown as well, was really, really good to see. And he definitely will be a leader in that side as well. With obviously a few guys injured at the moment, he's definitely a leader in that team. So really good to hear. Obviously, it's a big loss for the Warriors. What he was able to do for those halves as well. Be interesting to see how the Warriors play. Obviously, they had the bye last week, but coming into this week without Dylan Walker, the impact that's going to have on the halves, it's going to be really interesting. But I tell you what, from an Eels perspective, almost an immediate impact, and they played a lot better with Dylan Walker on the park, didn't they, mate?
Absolutely, man. And I agree with the sentiment that it's a huge loss for the Warriors and something that I think people aren't talking about. The Warriors have just lost, in the past 2 seasons, they've lost Sean Johnson and they've lost Tohu Harris, and that's basically both their inspirational leaders. And also just the captain of the ship for both guys, and they both left now. And I think a lot of Warriors fans kind of assumed that Walker was going to take on that leadership role, essentially what he's kind of done for Parramatta in their first win and his first game with the club. Like, you've got a guy who's, gotten over 200 games, he's a premiership winner, and he's played basically every spine position in his career. And you saw his experience, as you said, you saw his experience on the park with Parramatta, and I think it had a lot to do with, his locker room presence as well as his on-field presence. You saw a guy like Dylan Brown who has been struggling for the first month of footy, and he's come in and smashed it. It looked like, Dylan Brown was a lot calmer, and it felt like he felt a lot more confident in his ability to steer the ship with a guy like, Dylan Walker next to him. So I think it's a huge loss for the Warriors. Obviously, the Warriors are, doing a lot better this season than they did, the beginning of last season. But I do think that, guys like Walker, and you saw another guy who just celebrated 200 games over the weekend, a guy like Kurt Mann, a guy like Connor Watson. These versatile players who can play, play in the forwards, play in the spine. They're really important to basically any contending side, any rebuilding side. And I think that Walker is going to be one of the best signings that Parramatta have had in a few years. And I think that, you saw it just in their first win, their grit, their determination over the weekend. It looked like a completely different side. So, no, I think it's a great get for Parramatta. And I think he's going to be awesome for them in the years to come.
And I mean, you look at Parramatta as well. They're particularly not usually a side that plays for the utility either. They generally opt to go for a full forward bench. If the utility is there, it's usually a hooker. So it's very different to how Parramatta have played in the past. And I like it. I think that, as you said, as we've said, the impact that Dylan Walker has immediately on that side through the middle of the field. He can play a number of positions if there's injury as well. It's very different to what Parramatta have had in the past, but it works very well for them, and it is going to work for them. And, like we look at the signing when it happened, like because of the way that Parramatta have played over the past few years, you sort of look at it and you go, yeah, Dylan Walker, twilight zone of his career, going to Parramatta, it'll be a good signing, an extra set of eyes. But for him to have this sort of impact as well, like I think even we sort of underestimated the impact that he was going to have. And I'm really keen to see how he goes over the next few weeks, and if he can have a similar sort of impact as well once Moses walks back into the door too. What's the next update we've got here, mate?
Yeah, so a big one, and even bigger story now that the Bulldogs are 5-0. Bulldogs have open talks with Toby Sexton about an extension with the club. So as not only Bulldogs fans would know, but just as fans of the game, seeing Toby Sexton steer the Dogs around the park, leading them to a 5-0 start is something that nobody expected. I don't even think the Dogs expected Toby Sexton to take the control that he has over this side. And he's been rewarded. So they've opened talks with him about an extension, something that, if you rewind 12 months ago, many did not see coming. Many thought that Toby Sexton's time in the blue and white was finished with the emergence of Mitchell Woods. And talks about Toby Sexton potentially going to the Raiders or elsewhere. But it seems after passing on the likes of Mitchell Moses, of Daly Cherry Evans, Ben Hunt in the past couple of years, the Dogs have found their guy, at least for the immediate future. And it's huge for the Dogs. It's huge for their spine and for their chemistry. It looks like they're all in on Toby Sexton, at least for the foreseeable future. With a 5-0 start and missing Matt Burton, it looks like Toby Sexton is here to stay in Belmore.
Yeah, it's great to hear. Toby Sexton obviously playing very well over the past 2 years. We sort of saw when he came in for the Dogs immediately, he just had a huge impact. Great direction guy, really combines well with his outside men and he's right back rower. I love Toby Sexton. He's got a great kicking game as well. He's exactly what the Bulldogs need, and he can be the guy for the future for them as well, particularly while Mitch Woods is developing his game. I think it's great to have a guy like Toby Sexton that can just hop in there and do a real good job for them. I don't think they necessarily need to go away from Toby Sexton. I think they can win a comp with Toby Sexton in there. I love Toby Sexton, and I think that he's probably, out of all the guys that have been paired with Matt Burton so far, he's easily combined the best with Matt Burton in the time that he's been with him as well. So I really like it. In regards to them not going for DCE, I mean, it's a big, big opportunity. It's a big call to make. I mean, Toby Sexton, DCE, you could probably tell who the better halfback is, and that's no disrespect for Toby Sexton, but when DCE comes on the market, it is quite a big call not to go after it, not to make an offer. So it shows a lot of faith from the Bulldogs on Toby Sexton as well, which is really nice to see, isn't it?
Absolutely, man. And I think that kind of, speaks to why the Dogs are where they are right now. You got these, high value guys coming on the market, and it feels like in the past couple of years they're coming out more and more, whether it's DCE, whether it's a Adam Fanua Blake, whether it's a James Fisher Harris. These guys are coming on the market, and the Dogs are just passing on all of them. And I think it really speaks to the culture that, Ciraldo and Gould are now building at the Dogs. The belief in the group that they've got right now. Toby Sexton came out last week and said, honestly, the DCE rumors didn't bother him. He said he focused on himself, and if the Dogs wanted to go for him, they could. He had full and utter belief that the Dogs would pick him as their guy. And you're seeing, they're reaping the benefits of it now. They're 5-0. It's their best start in the NRL era, which is absolutely insane. And I think, it speaks to the systems that Ciraldo and Gould have now put in place at the Dogs. And I think that while Mitchell Woods is developing, they've been really clear that they don't want to rush him in. So even if Sexton is our halfback at the Bulldogs for the next 2 to 3 years, I think that it'll be great for the Dogs. I think it's great for the game as well, just seeing these guys be able to plug gaps here and there, similar to a Jamal Fogarty at the Raiders, similar to guys like this, even a Chad Townsend back in North Queensland for a while, getting these slightly experienced halfbacks into your side. They're few and far between, so I think it's a great call from the Bulldogs to trust him. And that confidence they've instilled in him has obviously been awesome for him as he's taken his games to heights that I feel like no one expected to see. So I think it's really good from the Dogs, and it's really good for Sexton as well.
You're talking about the start the Dogs have had, mate. I keep forgetting you're a Doggy supporter. It's great. But yeah, look at the Doggies next few weeks as well, just in regards to their start. They're obviously 5-0 at the moment, but they have the bye next week. That should be a win for them, just quietly. They then go up against the Bunnies. The Bunnies without Cody Walker, Jamie Humphries. That's going to be really interesting to see how the Bunnies respond. Obviously, Trell had to hop into the halves. We'll see if that eventuates. I don't think so, but we'll have to wait and see what they do there. But then they also go up against the Broncos. So it is going to be 2 real tough tests for them coming off the bye. It'll be interesting to see if they can make it 7-0, mate. What are your sort of thoughts? Do you think those are winnable games for the Dogs?
Look, I think other than the Dogs, the Rabbitohs have been the most impressive side to me in 2025 so far. But, missing Jamie Humphries, who's been essentially a top 5 halfback in the competition to start the year, and losing Cody Walker, your captain, I think that could point towards a win for the Bulldogs. Again, I've learnt never to doubt a Wayne Bennett-led side, but I don't think that the Rabbitohs, they just simply don't have their guys. And with the Dogs bringing in Viliami Kikau and Matt Burton for that game, as well as already bringing in Jacob Kiraz in yesterday, I do think that the Dogs get the win there. As we move on to the Broncos game, probably their toughest match of the year, mirroring their game against the Sharkies. I think that'll be a real test to see where the Dogs are at in premiership contention. But if the Dogs can make it, 7-0 leading into round, I think it's 8 or 9. I think that is just it's absolutely something that nobody saw coming. I think it just speaks to the systems that Gould and Ciraldo put in. There've been no bad days. Everyone in the side is here to stay. Like their most recent extension was Kurt Mann, who has flung himself into Origin contention. So it's been a mesmerizing start from the Bulldogs, and it speaks to the systems that management have put in place. And bringing back to Toby Sexton, I think we're seeing them reaping the rewards in this situation. So no, I think it's awesome stuff from the Dogs, and I do definitely think they can make it 7-0.
Well, look, what's crazy as well? Like if they do go 7-0 here, with beating the Rabbitohs and the Broncos, then they have the Titans, the Raiders, the Roosters, who are coming 16th at the moment, and then the Dolphins. Like they could be undefeated right up until round 14, which would just be absolutely insane because they have another bye in round 13. So, and then they have the Eels after that. So that would be crazy if they could have that strong of a start where they just keep winning these sort of games. But we'll have to wait and see. Maybe we're being a little bit optimistic. And look, I'm sure that you love hearing this as a Doggies fan for sure. But we'll have to wait and see how the Doggies go. Talk to me about the next story, mate. What's next on the list?
Now, probably the biggest story in the past week or so, and we've got someone who we just literally just spoke about in Wayne Bennett touching on this huge topic. Wayne Bennett fears Origin will be finished after eligibility drama. So, as many fans would know, Payne Haas and Tino Fa'asuamaleaui are considering a switch to Samoa from Australia on the international stage. Which has, obviously been super exciting for Samoan fans of the international game in general. But there is a little bit of talk around if this would impact the eligibility rules around Origin, which I definitely think is a fair point. And with, a lot of people choosing between essentially changing the rules of eligibility to allow these international players to play Origin, or just keeping the rules as is. Wayne Bennett fears that tampering with the eligibility rules could destroy the integrity of Origin and the concept behind it.
Yeah, well, look, it's going to be really interesting to see what they do with this eligibility drama. I just forgot how to speak English for a second there. But yeah, look, it will be quite interesting to see what they do. Obviously, you've got a number of guys with a number of different circumstances. Do you make the exceptions for those certain guys? Is that an exception you make for everyone? Like Addin Fanua-Blake's a key example. He did play for the Kiwis when he was very, very young, but he's obviously a mascot junior, born and bred in New South Wales. So you could argue that he's probably should be eligible for New South Wales. There's a lot of other guys that you could use as examples, but he's probably the more predominant one. It'll be very, very interesting to see what they do. And, mate, the more interesting conversation that I've heard out of this is that Samoa might be made a Tier 1 nation, which means that anyone who plays for Samoa would be ineligible to be picked for New South Wales or Queensland as well, which would be just insane, especially when you've got a lot of talent like Stephen Crichton, Jerome Luai, these sort of guys wouldn't be eligible. And then I think in that sort of circumstance, Wayne's right. Like Origin would just be finished because you're not getting the best talent in the Origin arena. Whether that's what Wayne means or whether it's not what he means, whether he means that you just should leave it how it is, I'm not too sure. But yeah, it'll be interesting to see what happens with Origin eligibility. What's the more recent, changes that you've sort of heard? Is there anything that's really come out in regards to the NRL making some changes around eligibility?
Well, the biggest thing at the moment, and I think there's a lot of confusion around it amongst fans, and honestly, I was a little bit confused as well. But as it currently stands, countries like Samoa and Tonga, they are still eligible to play in Origin as their Tier 2 nations. Now, the rules around what makes a Tier 1 nation isn't necessarily centered around the wins or the success of that nation on world stages, but more pointed towards the resources that they have. So, nations such as New Zealand, as you kind of touched on, and England as well, they are currently Tier 1 nations, meaning they've got the resources to build up their own players, which means that their players are unfortunately not allowed to play in Origin. I do fear that, as the international game grows, as we're seeing, clearly is, these nations such as Samoa, as Tonga, they will be eventually elevated to Tier 1 nations. And that will mean that guys, like you said, Jerome Luai, Stephen Crichton, these guys won't be eligible to play Origin. Now, I think where Wayne is coming from, his core message, and he said it in his presser, that it's mate versus mate, state versus state. And I definitely agree with the sentiment and, the whole concept around you want guys who were born and bred in New South Wales and Queensland, and you want guys who want to play for their country, which, would be Australia. But when these rules were introduced, decades ago, the international stage was not nearly as impressive as it is now. You did not have countries such as Samoa, such as Tonga, killing it as they are now. And so I think that by not allowing change in this situation, you're essentially limiting the growth of the game even further. Origin is the biggest sports spectacle in Australia as it currently stands. And if you look at, I've got the 2023 Origin squads here, 42% of the players were of Pacifica descent. And that was 2 years ago. The Origin arena has changed. And I think that it's time that we change with it as well. Because essentially, having a guy like Adam Fanua-Blake, who, as you said, was born and bred in New South Wales, who is essentially the second, maybe third best prop in the game, not being allowed to play Origin is essentially a travesty. I think that we as a fans are missing out on top quality content, even better than what we're already getting in Origin as it currently stands. And so as I do understand where Wayne is coming from. I do think that it is a little bit closed-minded if we do decide to keep the eligibility rules as they currently stand. I would be recommending some sort of change that would allow these elite players to play on the biggest stage in rugby league.
Yeah, well, look, it'll be interesting to see what happens, what the NRL do. Hopefully we don't see Tonga, Samoa, these sort of nations elevated to those tier ones, because it would just ruin it. You'd have a lot of guys that are Origin players through and through, lucky critters, lucky Luais, lucky To'os, being ruled out of the Origin stage, and it would hurt the game, really. It would hurt the game, to be honest. I think that you've definitely got to keep either maybe keep it how it is, or make some exceptions for some other guys to play in the Origin arena, change the rules a bit. So guys like Adam Fanua-Blake, who was born in New South Wales, be able to, if he wants to, represent New Zealand because that's what his heritage. But then also because he was born in New South Wales, played for the mascot Jets, like you'd be able to let him play for New South Wales as well. I think that those sort of guys with those sort of circumstances should definitely get a look in for State of Origin. So be very interesting to see what they do there. What's the next story you got there for me, mate?
So to finish off today, our fifth and last, I thought it would be interesting to take a look at an opinion piece that I worked on last week, and I'm really keen to get your thoughts on it. So as a lot of you would know, I currently work as a talent, and a lot of my work is focused around news stories. But on quiet days, or when the news kind of simmers down, I do like to take a shot at a few opinion pieces. And the one that I worked on last week, I think, kind of touches into what we've already talked about a little bit today. But it's why the Bulldogs rebuild will set them up for the next decade. So as we already kind of spoke about, the Dogs are currently 5-0. Going into a bye, and they've got a lot of winnable games for the next month or so. So I wanted to discuss a lot of talking points in the preseason were that the Dogs were essentially going to fall off a cliff, and they simply don't have the squad on paper to win now, or in the years to come. And obviously, with the 5-0 start, it obviously does help my case a little bit. But I have popped down a few talking points that I think might be interesting to discuss, and kind of prove why the Dogs probably for the next decade will be a competitive side and potentially one of the best. So the points I've got here. So first of all, the Bulldogs have had potentially the most sustainable rebuild of any side, probably since the Penrith Panthers. There's been no panic buys from the Dogs. They pulled out of the race for Ben Hunt, for Adam Fanua-Blake, for Cherry Evans, for Mitchell Moses. The list goes on. And instead, they've, invested in guys that fit the culture. And essentially, they've picked up guys like a Connor Tracy, who's right now he's top 10 on the Daily End leaderboard. I think he's even top 5 if my memory serves me. You got Kurt Mann, who's essentially in the running to be a Queensland Origin player this year, and then you got like a Satili Tupanua, who has just been electric since playing for the Blue and White. So I definitely think that their rebuild has been sustainable and has set them up for less salary cap pressure in the future, as well as bringing in the right guys for the culture. I also wanted to have a look at their youth development focus. Now, all grades of their junior grades have been excelling, whether it be Harold Matts, SG Board, Jersey Flag, New South Wales Cup. All their players, all their teams in their junior grades have been excelling. A couple even winning some grand finals as well. And it points to their junior development system, where you've got guys like Mitchell Woods, like a Blake Wilson, like a Bailey Hayward, who have come through and essentially look like mainstays in the NRL. Obviously, Mitchell Woods hasn't come in yet, but he's been, touted as the best rising halfback in the NRL. So their junior development focus has been off the charts. But then having a look at the other side of things and in their first grade side right now, their defensive revolution has also been, insane. They conceded the third fewest points in 2024. Also led the NRL in charge downs in 2024, just showing the grit and determination that Cameron Ciraldo has brought to the team. And finally, I just wanted to have a look at their investments, like their club investments as well. Obviously, Laundy Hotels has come in and they've, been killing it ever since then. And they're locked in with Laundy Hotels until 2032. After being a basket case for the early 2020s and not even having a major sponsor for a couple of years there. And now they're working on building a $50 million center of excellence as well. There's so many talking points as to why the Dogs rebuild will last them for the next 10 years. But I wanted to get your thoughts and see, do you think, am I jumping the gun too soon, or do you think the groundwork is kind of there for them to essentially excel for the next 10 years or even longer?
I think it is, mate. I think you're spot on. I think that they've made the right calls, investments. Their rebuild was really successful. They've got Leo Thompson coming in from the Knights next year as well to add to that forward pack. It's going to be very attractive to a lot of stars to sign there if they do get Ryan Pappenhausen maybe in the near future, depending on what he wants to do with Melbourne. Connor Tracy, the fullback they've got currently, you're right, he's third currently for Dally M's. He's sitting on 13 points just behind Munster and Jai Gray, who's currently in the lead. It's outstanding that the rebuild that you guys have had. Like Connor Tracy was in a number of positions at the Sharks. They couldn't really find a spot for him. Same with South Sydney. He was playing centre. He was playing 5'8", halfback, hooker, fullback. Locks down that fullback spot at the Bulldogs and has been playing very well there. You've got Kiraz from Newcastle as well. He's been so good since coming over. You've got a bunch of guys in there like Bronson Sherry, a guy that was obviously out for a number of years. You backed him to get in there and do a good job. He's been outstanding to start the year. Critter and his leadership. Toby Sexton, we spoke about him before. Matt Burton, getting him in there. Probably one of the more loved guys in that Bulldogs team at the moment. Reid Marnie, the absolute pests of rugby league, getting him in there as well. Like Preston from the Roosters as well. Like the list just goes on. You made the right investments. You haven't broken the bank by any stretch as well with a lot of these signings too. So I think that the Dogs have done very well. They put them in a really good position as well, because I'm sure that the Dogs have still got plenty of cash in the bank to extend a lot of these guys as well, which is really good. So I think they're in a great position, mate. I think they're in an outstanding position. Obviously not having a lot of information in front of me, like where the salary cap's currently sitting and what that plan does look like for the next 10 years. I can certainly say that it does look bright. They've got a really good bunch of young talent at the Dogs as well. You talked about Mitch Woods. He's also a great human as well. I've had a little bit to do with him at the start of this year. He's a real great human. I think that they've definitely got the right guys in that building for the future, and it will be interesting to see how they go over the next few years. Mate, thanks for hopping on again for another episode of Breaking Bread. Anything coming up for yourself over the next few weeks?
Yeah, mate. Look, I thank you for having me on again. It's it's the highlight of my week hopping on here and just chatting a bit of footy. I think everyone loves to do it, but being able to do it for work is just awesome. Just the same old. I'll be publishing some articles for Zero Tackle. If you want to check those out, just head over to Isaac Issa _journalist on Instagram, and I publish all my pieces over there as well as the Zero Tackle website. So if you're keen on getting further details on some of the stories that we got going on here, feel free to go check it out over there. But look, I will be back in next Tuesday to go back over the next few big stories, and as we know, footy never stops, so I'm sure we'll have some crazy stories next week as well.
Can't wait for it. See you guys in the next one for Breaking Bread.